Hello, this is Josh Patel back again with another biology lesson. Today we will be finishing up chapter 11, which is the evolution of populations. We'll start on 11.4, which is all about Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium provides a framework for understanding how populations evolve. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium describes populations that are not evolving. So biologists use this model to study population or other models as well. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is a type of model. So genotype frequencies stay the same in 5 conditions if 5 conditions are met. So this is what shows Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. One of the criteria is a very large population, so no genetic drift. No emigration or immigration, so no gene flow. So no new animals coming in or no animals that are leaving. No mutations, no new alleles are added to the gene pool. Random mating, so everything is nice and perfect. And no natural selection, all traits aid equally in survival. So these 5 criteria basically mean a population is natural and normal. No new genes are added to the gene flow. Everything is flowing perfectly fine. Nobody's evolving, and everybody's doing fine. So if these 5 criteria are met, it is Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Real populations rarely meet all 5 conditions, so this rarely ever happens. Real population data is compared to a model. Models are used to studying how populations evolve. So this is just a model, it never actually happens. So the Hardy-Weinberg equation is used to predict genotype frequencies in a population. Predicted genotype frequencies are compared with actual frequencies. So yet again, we're using the model and what we predicted and comparing it to actual life to see if we were right. Used for traits in simple dominant recessive systems. So this is just an image showing how the Punnett square is used, and they use the same type of math in the Hardy-Weinberg equation. There are 5 factors that can lead to evolution. Genetic drift, which changes allele frequencies due to chance alone. So genetic drift was when, like the bottleneck effect, when just randomly a certain part of the population dies. So here's our initial population, and then genetic drift occurs, and after a bottleneck event, only orange and blue alleles remain in the small population. Through genetic drift, orange alleles increase in frequency. Since there are more orange alleles in the new population, they're going to increase more as well later. So basically it's saying, by chance, all the white and the green ones died off. Gene flow moves alleles from one population to another, so gene flow is the next thing. So here, same initial population, and now we have 2 green ones that came into our population and 2 orange ones that left our population. So our new distribution becomes like this. We have more green and less orange. So this is gene flow. Mutation, which produces genetic variation needed for evolution. So here's our initial population, and then we get a mutated cell. A new allele associated with red body color, which is the mutated cell, is formed through mutation. This could affect sexual selection if red body color improves mating success. It could affect natural selection if red body color also increases the chance for survival. So if this red mutated cell is better at survival, then it's probably going to be more likely to mate and have more offspring that are also red. But if it's not good for their environment, the red will probably just die off instantly and never be able to pass on its genes. Sexual selection selects for traits that improve mating success. So sexual selection is basically like what traits are better to have for mating success. So blue alleles, which are associated with blue body color, which improves mating success, blue alleles therefore increase in frequency. So it's easier for blue body color to mate. So that's why they're more successful, and that's why you have more of them. The frequency of blue body is more. Natural selection selects for traits advantages for survival. So yet again, our same initial population, and then white alleles are associated with white body color, which allows individuals to blend in with the environment and avoid predators, while white alleles therefore increase in frequency. So since white alleles can probably blend in with the snow better because they're probably living in a cold climate, they are more successful, they don't die off, and they produce. While the other ones, they die off and they're not able to reproduce. In nature, populations evolve, expected in all populations most of the time, and it responds to changing environment. So if the environment doesn't change, the population's probably not going to evolve because they're already well suited to the environment they're in. So 11.5, speciation through isolation. New species can arise when populations are isolated. So the isolation of a population can lead to speciation, and speciation is just the arrival of two new species from one species. So one species basically branches off into two new species. Populations become isolated when there is no gene flow, and as we know, gene flow is the exchanging of alleles or the genes in the gene pool by having people that come in or people that leave. Isolated populations adapt to their own environments. Genetic differences can add up over generations. So, in an isolated species, there's usually no gene flow because nobody comes in or out because it's isolated. So, reproductive isolation can occur between isolated populations. Members of different populations cannot mate successfully. So, if speciation occurs, that means the species are different, and if the species are different, as we learned, a species is a group that can mate successfully with itself. So if speciation occurs, they can't mate with the other population anymore. So this is the final step for becoming separate species. And this is just an example showing that scientists inserted genes into fruit flies. They use fruit flies for a lot of their experiments. And there was a tropical and a temperate gene. And so they put them in the fruit flies, and the males and females of a temperate climate would pair up, and males and females of a tropical climate would pair up. They can't interbreed, like a tropical female can't mate with a temperate male because they're different species now. Speciation is the rise of two or more species from one existing species. So populations can become isolated in several ways. Behavioral barriers can cause isolation. It's called behavioral isolation. It includes differences in courtship and mating behavior. And courtship is basically just what leads up to mating. Geographic barriers can also cause isolation, which is geographic isolation. And these are physical barriers that divide populations. It could be an ocean, a river, a desert, maybe mountains even, whatever it is. And then there's temporal barriers which cause isolation. This is called temporal isolation, and this is basically the times which certain species mate. So if they mate in the beginning of summer or like after winter in the spring, it's different for each species. So 11.6, patterns in evolution. Evolution occurs in patterns, okay. Evolution through natural selection is not random. So if it's through natural selection, it's not random, okay. Natural selection can have direction. The effect of natural selection add up over time. So over the years, every generation something changes just a little bit, and over time that adds up to something different. So generation 1, 2, and 3, 1 we have the normal generation. In generation 2 we have a little more, like half more green, and then in generation 3 we have almost all green. But this happens, of course, much slower than this diagram. Convergent evolutions describe evolution towards similar traits in unrelated species. So this is when two species are evolving towards the same traits, they're becoming similar. Divergent evolution describes evolution towards different traits in closely related species. So this could kind of be like speciation when one species evolves into two separate ones. So just like this, the fox's ancestor became a kit fox and a red fox. They changed. Species can shape each other over time. Two or more species can evolve together through coevolution. Evolutionary paths become connected. Species evolve in response to changes in others. So two species evolve like simultaneously together because of the other one evolving. So coevolution can occur in beneficial relationships, and coevolution can occur in competitive relationships, sometimes called evolutionary. And this is probably the one they're probably going to ask you about, the competitive part of it. So this is an example. The crab is a natural predator of this snail. So this is the crab, this is the snail. Natural selection favors snails with thicker shells and spines, so these to protect them from the crabs. And then they eventually evolve into all having thicker spines, because all the ones that don't have spines die off and can't reproduce. Through natural selection, crabs evolve more powerful claws that can pierce the snail's thick shells. So since the snail got thick spine, all the weak crabs died off and only strong crabs lived to reproduce. So now all the crabs are strong and they can pierce the shell of the snail. And so the snail therefore evolves into having even more spines. And so then the crab will also have to evolve to be even stronger to break the shell of the stronger spine. So it keeps going. Species can also become extinct. Extinction is the elimination of a species from Earth. So every animal in that species dies. Background extinction occurs continuously at a very low rate. So extinction isn't very common, but it's happening more now due to human impact. But it used to be it happened at a very slow rate. Occurs at roughly the same rate as speciation. So animals are getting extinct and forming at about the same rate. Usually affects species in a small area caused by local changes in environment. So basically a catastrophic event happens and the animal can't adapt fast enough to live. Mass extinctions are rare but much more intense. Destroys many species at a global level, thought to be caused by catastrophic events. At least 5 mass extinctions in the last 6 million years. This is just a chart showing the different extinction rates, and when extinction rate is plotted against time, mass extinctions appear as periodic peaks rising above normal extinction levels, so we can tell these giant peaks are mass extinctions. Speciation often occurs in patterns. A pattern of punctuated equilibrium exists in the fossil record. Theory proposed by Eldred and Cloud in 1917. We don't need to know this. Episodes of speciation occur sudden in geographic time, followed by long periods of little evolutionary change. So basically species will evolve and then for a long time they won't change that much because they're already adapted to the environment, and then the environment will change and then the species will change again. Revised Darwin's ideas that species arose through gradual transformations. Many species evolved from one species during adapted radiation. Ancestral species diversify into many descendant species. Descendant species usually adapt to a wide range of environments because they all live in different spots. So here we have the ancestral species. So let's just say we have one ancestral species, and then eventually they'll split up into different species depending on where these animals live, and the five theories we went over earlier, they'll eventually split into many other species, and they'll all eventually become totally different from each other that they can't mate together. So that's the end of chapter 11, which is the evolution of populations. Next time we will be doing chapter 12, so stay in touch and watch that video.